This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. This is Tech Talk. I'm Frida Liu. Although online shopping is growing rapidly in Malaysia, traditional physical stores are also seeing the same increment. Online shopping, as you know, has a lot of benefits such as convenience and with special deals. However, smart retailers of the future remember the fundamental strengths of the in-store shopping experience, bundled with technological tools and strategies that provide enhanced customer experience and operational cost savings. And here with me today is Anand Mehta, Business Development Director for Motorola Solutions. Now, I know your history has been in retail, and as a retail industry expert, who would you consider the top leaders in the retail industry, and why do you consider them leaders in this space?
I think there's certainly leaders in both the international brand names and the local ones as well. So companies that come to mind are Tesco, Mydin. And what they do differently is they go beyond the traditional definition of retail, which is simply reselling product. Ideally, they optimize three things: the supply chain, the customer experience, and they use technology as an enabler rather than infrastructure.
Okay, so there's the supply chain, the behind the scenes. Now, what are the current trends that you are seeing in the retail industry?
There's certainly a very challenging environment in terms of profitability. We notice a lot of retailers have pressure on margins. The competition regulates everything. So there is a clear drive in all retail formats towards differentiation, with particular view of inventory management and your customer loyalty and the customer experience. Additionally, I think what we see in markets such as Malaysia, which is in mid-stage of maturity, is that the entire focus here is on scaling up store openings. I think you've got another 3 or 4 years of upside of store openings here for most retail companies.
The upside, a few more years of the upside. All right. Now, in the competitive world that we are in today, what are the challenges faced by Malaysian and Asian retailers at large?
Yes, a very relevant question. I think the largest challenge they face is actually planning their assortment due to the cultural diversity. This is clearly something that's very apparent to Asia because we have a lot of different types of races and preferences that the consumers demand. There is also an comparatively immature supply chain. So we need to regulate supply chains across an entire country and minimize wastage in situations like that. The cost of real estate is a real challenge. Asia is extremely expensive to run a retail operation in. And definitely there's a lack of industry development in terms of developing talent and human resources.
How does technology assist retailers today? And you were saying earlier on that technology as an enabler. Now, at the moment, with increasing popularity with online shopping, some retailers also seem to feel the pinch. Now, do you think that there will be a future where all retailers will go online and downsize or even close down their physical presence?
I don't see that happening. I think clearly the modern day shopping center is the old school bazaar. I think it's as old as human nature itself. So I don't see physical stores being under any sort of distress permanently. What we do see is I think that the online presence will stay permanently as another part of the channel to manage the customer. So the term in the industry for this is omni-channel. I think that dominance will get slightly more skewed in favor of online retailing, but never to replace bricks and mortar stores.
Okay, so it'll be a case where I guess every physical store or any company that has a physical presence will have to be supported with an online presence.
Absolutely, they augment that.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? When you hear of a store and you want to do some research, you go online and check.
Correct.
If I don't hear about you online, I'm thinking, it's an expected presence. Yeah. Okay.
If we consider what is a typical shopper's journey, it's typically a 3-step process. You have discovery, selection, and transaction. So I think the online presence will aid the discovery and selection for the consumer, but largely transactions are still going to be carried out in store.
Okay. So what role does mobility solution play, and how do you support retailers of smaller sizes taking into consideration cost factors?
Mobility at its very essence is the relevant information in relevant hands at the relevant time. Now, whether it's a large retailer or a small retailer, that remains consistent. I think what smaller retailers and smaller organizations grapple with is multitasking. So in that regard, mobility and mobility solutions can enable one individual to multitask if they are in a smaller environment.
Okay, I'm here with Anand Mehta, Business Development Director for Motorola Solutions, on the future of the retail industry. And coming up, we'll talk about the enterprise mobility solution right here in Tech Talk, BFM 89.9. Good afternoon. This is Tech Talk. In case you just joined us, Frida Liu here speaking to Anand Mehta, Business Development Director for Motorola Solutions. And we're talking about mobility solution and smart retailers. Now, what should retailers look out for in an enterprise mobility solution?
I think as with everything, the primary concern is a strategy. I think the retailer needs to determine what is the objective and the desired outcome of introducing mobility within the infrastructure. Secondly, of course, you need enterprise-grade solutions, support, and a local partner network that's reliable. And last but certainly not least, I think you should look for solid references and use cases.
Mm-hmm. You know, earlier on you spoke about omni-channel, and should all channels be used, or again, just to evaluate your strategies, what would be the best way, and then to identify? Because there's also the case of, if the first mover advantage, should they take that risk in that area?
I think they should. Additionally, now, if we look at the penetration of smartphones and tablets into the hands of the consumers, you have to have a virtual presence. I think, again, like we mentioned earlier, as long as you can aid the discovery and a selection process of a consumer, that's the largest part of the puzzle that the omni-channel presence will serve to fulfill.
Okay, now is it true that a large amount of investment is required for retailers to transform their retail stores? And do you think Malaysian retailers are willing to spend that kind of money?
I think it's the cost of a solution is very personal. It's relevant to the maturity of the individual company that we're discussing. Largely, I think, glad to say that most CIOs are now considering a return on investment rather than a pure outlook on capital expenditure. So provided there's a strong business case enabling business results in terms of increasing sales as well as perhaps reducing expenses in the right areas, it doesn't seem to be as much of a burden anymore. In terms of adoption, again, it's completely driven by the state of maturity of the retailer. But I think now whoever moves into mobility first for the next year or two will have competitive advantage of being the first mover. Eventually, what is hot now becomes regular, and in 3 or 4 years, this will be the norm. It'll be the rule, not the exception.
Yeah, at the early days when, we were still deciding whether to have a website or not.
Exactly.
And it's now a given that you should have a website.
Must have a website.
When I know we talked about Malaysian retailers, do you see, and it is the retailer, or is it country specific? I mean, just from your observation.
I think it's a lot to do with the maturity of the entire retail industry within the country. So once you've optimized your store network and your distribution network, the only thing you can really do is then get involved into mobilizing yourself more into the consumer's life. So I think Asia is at a beautiful point of its maturity where it can leapfrog a lot of technologies. There are a lot of learnings to be had from the Northern American market, which Asia can adopt at a cost much lower than when they would have had to in the early days of such solutions.
Okay. So how do you think traditional retailers can find ways to differentiate themselves?
Absolutely. So we largely segment retail into 4 environments. We have the buying experience, the shopping experience, supply chain management, and productivity and infrastructure. So within each one of these 4 environments, there are 2 or 3 key solutions or applications that any retailer could put to use to further enhance their business.
Okay, for example, in each stage, could you just elaborate a little bit further?
Well, the buying experience is largely driven by a transaction. So a number of point of sale solutions are given a lot of consideration in this environment. The shopping experience is a little bit softer. It's more to do with the merchandising, the displays, the customer experience, the customer loyalty programs. Supply chain management is quite self-explanatory. Everything to do with inventory management, receiving the stock, holding the stock, and disposing of it. And last but certainly not least is productivity and infrastructure. So your ability to support with live intelligence, dynamic data, your management staff, your task worker staff, any one of these things will give you massive competitive advantage.
Okay, so and how can retailers take that step towards a complete mobile environment?
I think the first thing is always to mobilize whatever existing systems you have in place. That's the first point to begin with. Once that is done, then you can slowly transform a few key business processes. And lastly, as a third stage, you could actually use mobility to innovate. Perhaps new revenue streams, new customer engagement models. But typically it's mobilization, transformation, and then innovation.
Okay, and do you feel that Malaysian retailers are ready to move forward with the current technology offerings in the industry? And if not now, then how soon do you foresee a full adoption mobility solution in the industry?
I think Malaysian retailers are absolutely ready to move. We have some wonderful customers and engagements in this domestic market. I think Malaysia is at a stage where, as we mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of upside in store openings. You simply cannot scale your business as a retailer without using technology as an enabler. The permutations of the products for sale, the consumer preferences, and the store locations can no longer be managed physically. Malaysia is absolutely ready.
And okay, you were saying that Malaysia is still on the upside when it comes to store openings. Are there countries in Asia that are already sort of stagnating or tapering?
We find markets such as Australia and Japan very mature, especially in the number of store outlets. So they have another consideration, and the role technology plays in that environment is how to maximize efficiency on a fully developed footprint. So the retail term for this is same store sales. So those markets are always preoccupied with getting maximum efficiency with existing networks because they simply cannot expand anymore.
And I guess in that space, that's where mobile solutions is going to help them innovate.
Absolutely.
All right. And I've been having a chat with Anand Mehta, Business Development Director for Motorola Solutions. This is Tech Talk, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.